3 Montreal buyers made 3 completely different mistakes, and I can tell you exactly what each one of them cost them in real dollars. If you're about to buy, one of these 3 is probably closer to happening to you than you think. I'm not going to tell you generic mistakes like don't skip the inspection. You've heard that. I'm going to walk you through 3 specific situations, what the buyer did, why it seemed reasonable at the time, and exactly what it cost them when it went wrong. Real math, not a warning label. Case 1. 2 couples bidding on a duplex, so each couple could live in 1 unit. Their agent, not me, for what it's worth, told them that because they intended on living in the property, they would be able to repossess the tenants that were currently in place and move into the property at the end of the current lease term. Here's what nobody warned them about. In Quebec, the only time you can repossess a tenant is if you are a sole owner or a romantically involved couple that owns the property. Once you are 3 or more people, you no longer qualify under those conditions and thus lose the right of repossession. The tenants knew their rights and had no interest in moving out. The buyers ended up having to pay the tenants $20,000 in order to have them terminate their lease. But that's $20,000 they hadn't planned on top of everything else. Case 2. A buyer purchased a unit in a building that had just completed significant repairs to the brick on one of the sides. They were sold on the idea that everything had been inspected and that this was the only damaged area, and that the sellers had covered their share of the cost, and thus there would be no additional upcoming costs. They didn't take the time to read the inspection reports from the engineers. 2 years after moving in, the board reaches out advising that the other side of the building is now suffering from the same issues that they faced 2 years prior. Last time, this cost the sellers $70,000, and now they expect the cost to be around the same. Their share of $70,000 is due within the year. That information, the issues and potential future issues with the building siding, were sitting in the engineer's reports the whole time. It's not usually part of a standard due diligence, but in this case, they needed to be studied. Case 3. A buyer purchased specifically planning to run the unit as a short-term rental. The projected income made the numbers work on paper, even at a premium purchase price. What he didn't confirm before closing, the building's own bylaws and the city zoning for that address. They didn't actually permit short-term rentals the way he assumed. Not a change that happened after, because that's also happened, a restriction that was already there. He ended up renting it long-term instead, at a monthly rent about $900 below what he had budgeted based on the short-term projections. Over the first year, that's roughly $10,800 less than his numbers assumed, on a purchase he'd specifically stretched for, believing the short-term income would cover it. Notice what's actually common across all 3. It's not bad luck, and it's not a bad market. In every case, the information that would have prevented it already existed. Understanding the ins and outs of the repossession law, an engineer's report sitting in the co-ownership documents, a zoning bylaw on the books before the offer was even written. Every one of these was knowable. None of them were caught. If you're about to make an offer, this is exactly the kind of thing a second set of eyes catches before you sign, not after. That's what the 15-minute call is for. Links down below. I can't wait to see you.